The wheels are only ever driven by an electric motor, and that means that we can control the engine that's generating the electricity separately to the driving speed and the acceleration. But we've also added another technology, which is active noise cancellation. So very similar to the headphones that you use on the aeroplane, we have a speaker in the luggage room of the car that will play the inverse noise to the engine and cancel it out. So when you're driving around the city, the engine can start and stop, and you won't even notice it's happening.
Local farmers struggling and small supermarkets feel the pinch. Good morning, Josh Brydon in the southeast with ABC News. A Bull Lagoon dairy farmer says the ongoing fuel and fertiliser crisis is one of the toughest times he's faced in 50 years in the industry. Producer and Dairy SA chair Andrew Cavell runs about 800 cows at his property, but has seen his input costs sharply rise due to the war in the Middle East. He believes if the conflict continues, it will have wide-ranging impacts on the availability of dairy and many other agricultural products.
We all go to the supermarket to buy what we've grown or produced or whatever, and it's a food security issue. There will be certainly some things that are not on shelves in the future if this continues to go on.
The Director of Master Grocers Australia says supermarkets are holding off changing prices in their stores as fees from suppliers swell in response to rising fuel prices. Diesel prices continue to remain high despite the federal government halving the fuel excise last month. Lincoln Weimer is also the COO of the Red Drop Group, which operates supermarkets across Victoria and southern New South Wales. He says independent stores can't hold prices much longer.
I spoke to our main transport company, and he's gone from about $20,000 a month to over $30,000 in fuel costs alone. Most retailers I've spoken to have not moved on prices yet, but if this continues, they're going to have to.
Police are investigating a truck rollover at Penola on Friday night. Emergency services were called to the intersection of the Riddick Highway and Riddick Street at 9 p.m. following reports of a crash. The driver, a 28-year-old local man, was trapped in the cabin for more than an hour before being freed by CFS crews. He was transported to hospital with serious injuries. Police are urging anyone who witnessed the crash or has dashcam or CCTV footage to contact Crime Stoppers. A member of the State Voice to Parliament says the SA Electoral Commission ignored suggestions they made to improve voter turnout before the state election. 390 formal votes were lodged for the Murraylands, Riverland and South East region at the latest election. Nurrunjeri man Rob Wright says clear feedback was given to the Commission about the layout of polling stations to encourage voters, including signage and voice posters. He says he didn't see any of the suggested changes when he voted in Berry.
Those sort of barriers don't help, and the minute that some of our mob are feeling anxious in that space because you can be targeted for one reason or another, it's just easier to, do your votes and get out of there.
A spokesperson for the Electoral Commission of South Australia says they are very concerned to hear of the experiences of some First Nations Voice to Parliament voters. They say the Commission will be looking into these matters, and as with the state election, the SA Voice election will be subject of a comprehensive review. Australian unions are launching an urgent case in the Fair Work Commission to increase vehicle allowances for workers struggling with higher fuel costs. Political reporter Romy Stevens has more.
Vehicle allowances require employers to pay employees a per kilometre amount to cover fuel and maintenance costs. The Fair Work Commission adjusts these annually on July the 1st, but the Australian Council of Trade Unions wants this brought forward amid the current fuel crisis. It's also calling for the allowance to be updated in line with the cost of running a car as measured by inflation. ACTU Secretary Sally McManus says fast food delivery drivers, aged care workers and disability workers shouldn't be out of pocket when required to use their own vehicle at work.
The Tatiara Council is looking at a bill of around $400,000 to ensure its swimming pools can reopen next summer. Sam Bradbrook reports.
A council report says there's a range of safety and water quality concerns at the Keith and Bordertown pools requiring immediate attention. The pools are more than 60 years old, with the Bordertown pool still using its original pipework and filtration system. It recommends elected members vote to undertake $395,000 worth of works across winter, which would allow the pools to reopen for the 2026-27 summer season. A major renewal of the Bordertown pool and smaller upgrades at Keith could cost $6 million, while delaying the works would mean the pools stay shut next summer. Elected members will consider the report tonight.
The federal opposition leader will reveal the first part of the coalition's highly anticipated immigration policy during a speech today. Here's political reporter Nicole Asher.
Before she was ousted as opposition leader, Susan Lee was expected to hand down the coalition's migration plan. But the first instalment will now be outlined by new leader Angus Taylor during a speech to the Menzies Research Centre. If elected, the coalition will make it a binding requirement for visa holders to comply with the Australian Values Statement. Anyone who applies for an Australian visa will also be subject to social media screening. Angus Taylor will argue that Australia's migration program has been in chaos under Labor, with numbers too high and standards too low.
South Australia's Legal Services Commission's first office in the southeast will open in Mount Gambier today. The Commission offers free legal information and advice to all people in the state and some legal representation for eligible people. Its office will be situated on James Street. Lawyer in charge Kylie Holland says everyone deserves adequate legal support and advice.
For people in Mount Gambier and the Greater South East region, we're really excited and keen to make sure that legal services are available for everyone.
South Australian councils could hike rates above inflation to deal with higher fuel costs. Political reporter Thomas Kelsall has more.
Rate hikes, service cuts, project delays and cost blowouts. That's what the state's councils are grappling with as they prepare their budgets for next financial year. Mount Barker District Council says soaring fuel prices have added $50,000 a month to its budget, warning that some projects could go 50% over budget and may need to be delayed. The City of Adelaide is discussing a rate hike of 5.6%, about 2 percentage points higher than inflation, and is searching for efficiencies in its budget. The Local Government Association says rubbish collection has not been disrupted, but councils may have to cut back on other services.
And mobile service in Millicent will be disrupted from this Sunday as Telstra works to upgrade its mobile base station in the town. Telstra says the upgrades will improve the mobile site's capacity and upgrade customers' data connections. The works will not impact landline, NBN and satellite internet services, and mobile coverage from other providers won't be impacted. 000 calls will also continue to work throughout the upgrade. The works will run during daylight hours from Sunday, April 19th to Friday, April 24th. The operator of the Mount Gambier Airport says it wants assurances about the future of regional air travel. Sam Bradbrook has more.
Qantas cited fuel costs and falling demand as reasons why it cut all flights between Mount Gambier and Adelaide effective from May 18. District Council of Grant Mayor Kylie Boston says costs and flight times made flying difficult.
Ticket prices are not something that's new. We've had that for a very long time. We'll continue to advocate for that.
Mount Gambier Chamber of Commerce President Samuel Taylor says it's another blow for the local economy.
When you start to see these big businesses feel the pinch, the flow-on effect for the smaller businesses in regional locations is a lot wider.
Regional Express will continue its flights from Mount Gambier.
The Australian Medical Association is warning Qantas's decision to suspend flights to and from Mount Gambier will widen inequality between regional and city patients. AMASA President Peter Subramaniam says the cancellation of the service will impact 40 visiting specialists who fly in and out of the region, as well as patients needing to travel to Adelaide for care. He says he's also concerned services to other regional areas could be affected in the near future.
It's not just a transport issue from our perspective, it's really about equitable healthcare access for regional South Australians and in particular the people of Mount Gambier.
Federal member for Barker Tony Patton says Qantas's decision to suspend the service is disappointing but not unexpected. Mr Patton recently met with Qantas Link executives with ideas for how to increase passenger numbers in and out of Mount Gambier, such as changing flights to more popular times. He says Qantas's call to suspend its flights is similar to banks deciding to leave regional towns.
by the time you add the cost of the accommodation to the flight, it wasn't often cost effective to fly, and that's why occupancy was around 20%, and you're just not going to be able to maintain a service when, even on your good days, just over 20% of people are filling the seats on the planes.
The WA government says it has secured 4 million litres of diesel as part of Australia's first state-owned strategic fuel stockpile, but SA says it has no current plans to follow suit. Catherine Birmingham reports.
$10 million worth of diesel is expected to arrive in WA within weeks as part of a stockpile that will be separate from the National Reserve. The state's Energy Minister says the fuel, which will be stored in the northern Kimberley region, is aimed at addressing supply chain issues in regional and remote areas. Addressing questions over whether SA will do the same, Energy Minister Tom Koutsantonis said the state has sufficient fuel supply and the federal government continues to work to ensure that remains the case. He says fuel security is a national problem that requires a national solution.
Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers will look to shore up Australia's fuel supplies when he meets with international counterparts in the United States this week. Here's political reporter Romy Stevens.
Jim Chalmers will depart for Washington DC this morning, where he'll attend the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting during a short 24-hour visit. He'll also meet with counterparts from countries that supply fuel to Australia, including Japan, China and Singapore. Mr Chalmers says during talks he'll reiterate the government's calls for an enduring ceasefire in the Middle East and proper reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, as well as amplify efforts to secure Australia's fuel supplies. The Treasurer says global economic uncertainty is being factored into preparations for the May budget.
Australia's pharmaceutical regulator warns injectable peptides pose a significant public health risk. Peptides are short chains of amino acids with unapproved versions being used for muscle growth and recovery. The Therapeutic Goods Administration says it has received reports of severe allergic reactions and hospitalisations linked to products sold online. Australian Medical Association Chair Dr. Michael Bonning says stronger regulation is needed.
There are regulated peptides, but what we are seeing and what the TGA has put out this safety alert about is designer, unregulated, sold online peptides that are not checked or reviewed for any form of safety or quality here in Australia.
SA's Tourism Minister says the state government is disappointed by Qantas's decision to cancel its Mount Gambier service. Talia Fay has more.
Qantas announced this week it would scale back flights in response to rising fuel prices, including the indefinite suspension of its Adelaide to Mount Gambier route. The airline is also cutting flights between Port Lincoln and Adelaide between May 18 and June 30. Minister for Tourism Emily Burke says the government has directly expressed its dissatisfaction to the airline. Qantas said it is closely monitoring the fuel situation and working with government and suppliers who continue to provide confidence in fuel supply.
The new member for Mount Gambier says he's also disappointed by Qantas's decision. Samuel O'Brien reports.
Independent member Travis Faction says Tuesday's announcement came as a shock, but he understood the schedule was not popular with travellers.
It's still going to have an impact on those trying to get up to Adelaide and back.
The exit by Qantas leaves Regional Express as the sole commercial airline operating out of Mount Gambier from May 18. In a statement, Rex committed to servicing both Melbourne and Adelaide into the future, adding it will regularly review schedules. A Royal Flying Doctor Service spokesperson also confirmed they're working closely with fuel suppliers and the government to continue their work across the country, including in Mount Gambier.
The Transport Workers Union says Qantas's decision to decrease capacity across its domestic network could mean some ground staff are let go. The airline has announced it will scale back flights in response to rising fuel prices, including the indefinite suspension of its Adelaide to Mount Gambier route. TWU Assistant National Secretary Emily McMillan confirmed the union is in ongoing conversations with the airline.
We're being told at the moment there's no direct job losses. We're seeking confirmation of that, but it's those support services and those contractor workers where there's flow-on effects. So we've asked for extensive briefings around that to have a look at what those job hits mean and impacts mean.
Federal member for Barker Tony Passon has ruled out a move to One Nation and says he's never been offered the opportunity to change parties. Mr Passon says the result of the March state election delivered lessons to the Liberal Party, including the need to better reflect regional areas. but he says he plans on helping make those changes and has not had any conversations with State One Nation leader Cory Bernardi about a switch.
I expect that's because my very good friend Cory Bernardi knows that I'm a lifelong Liberal, and that he knows that because when he left our party, he and I spoke at length about the fact that I think he'd made the wrong choice.
A Coorong seafood business is losing some of its catch to local seals who have learnt to seek out fishing boats. Meningie-based Coorong Wild Seafood is struggling with lower mullet numbers so far this year and has been unable to catch other fish such as mulloway, bream and flounder due to the seals. Manager Tracy Hills says the seals have learned to pull the fishing nets apart and retrieve the catch.
We do what we call ninja fishing. We'll run out, throw your nets in the water, hope to hell you catch some fish and then pick them up and take them home and hope the seals don't turn up, and then you have to leave the area alone for a couple of days.
The Cancer Council says it wants to see stricter rules around alcohol advertising, including zero alcohol drinks that share branding with alcoholic products. Research from the group shows almost 2/3 of advertisements for zero alcohol drinks show them being drunk in traditionally alcohol-free scenarios. It says the drinks are not being presented as alternatives to alcohol, but in addition to it. Researcher Julia Stafford says that type of marketing limits the public health benefits of the products.
They seem to really be pushing these alcohol-free options in places that you wouldn't see alcohol being promoted, or situations that you certainly wouldn't be allowed to see in alcohol advertising, like while you're operating heavy machinery, driving, exercising.
The federal government has been contacted for comment. Qantas has responded to claims it didn't try hard enough to make flights between Adelaide and Mount Gambier work before indefinitely suspending them this week. Samuel O'Brien explains.
Qantas announced on Tuesday it would not operate flights to and from the Mount Gambier Regional Airport from May 18. The member for Barker, Tony Passon, Mount Gambier State MP Travis Fatchin and Grant Mayor Kylie Boston all say the schedule was not suited for the needs of the community, arguing early morning departures and evening arrivals would have worked better. In response, Qantas says it made a number of schedule changes to try and boost demand, including improving connections and retiming its Sunday flights. The airline added it had been discussing the route with relevant politicians in the months leading up to the decision.
A Naracoorte agronomist says uncertainty in international markets is delaying the start of seeding in the region, despite favourable conditions for earlier sowing heading into winter. Wetter and cooler weather has been a good sign for local farmers who have struggled with drought conditions for the past 2 years. Nick Hancock from Elders Naracoorte says around 40% of his clients are making adjustments to account for changing market conditions.
Maybe some more favour beans going in that weren't going in because that's one less paddock that'll need urea. A lot more clover has gone in for livestock feed because the sheep and the cattle and the wool, there's a lot of good pricing in there and good contracts and good opportunity, less paddocks that need urea. So there's been a bit of a shift.
An additional 250,000 tonnes of urea from Indonesia has been secured for Australian farmers amid fertiliser supply chain disruptions triggered by the Middle East war. Here's political reporter Romy Stevens.
Australia imports around 2/3 of its nitrogen fertiliser urea from the Middle East, but that's been disrupted by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. While the federal government says there's enough fertiliser for the initial planting season this year, a commercial deal between distributor Incitec Pivot Fertilisers and Pupuk Indonesia is set to make up about 20% of the remaining fertiliser needed by October. The government yesterday announced the introduction of streamlined border processes, which it says won't compromise on biosecurity to help get fertiliser to farmers faster.
A man has been arrested at the Mount Gambier airport after allegedly crashing into a police vehicle. Police say they spotted a 42-year-old man wanted for recent offending at about 2 p.m. yesterday. Police allege the man drove away but clipped a patrol car, causing minor damage. He was arrested and charged with multiple offences, including assault, driving while disqualified and property damage, as well as outstanding warrants. He's expected to appear in court today. The District Council of Grant is considering a name change, with elected members to vote on sending the new option out for consultation. Sam Bradbrook has more.
The Southern Limestone Coast Council could become the new name of the current District Council of Grant. Branding agency Fuller has worked with the council to develop the name as well as a new logo, which has been workshopped with elected members and a citizens forum. In a report to be tabled at Monday night's council meeting, the council says the name change was needed as the name Grant was not easily recognisable as a district or destination. The report also said there may be community questions about how much rebranding council assets will cost. Elected members will vote on whether to send the rebrand out for public consultation.
And South Australia's Ombudsman has found the state's public breast screening service conducted research without ethics approval or patient consent. The breast screen assay study was conducted between 2020 and 2021 and involved 99 women who'd been found to have benign lumps. The Ombudsman found the service didn't seek informed consent from the women or approval from the Central Adelaide Local Health Network's Human Research and Ethics Committee. The network's CEO says Breast Screen SA unreservedly apologises to the women who were not properly informed about the research.
After this, there is no turning back. You sip the red can, the story ends. You sip the black can, you enter dreamland. And I show you just how good the truth can taste. Take the Pepsi Max Taste Challenge.
The president of the Limestone Coast Football League says the addition of Penola has helped boost spectator numbers right across the competition. The Eagles joined from the KNTFL for the 2025 season, narrowly missing finals in their first year in the league. With round one of the 2026 season now complete, League President Kurt Slavin says he expects to see strong crowds throughout the year.
The competition has lent itself to being very upbeat and competitive. Penola coming into the competition has really helped the numbers. They really travel, and I think the other teams have actually seen this and vice versa, so they're travelling also.
Over the weekend, North Gambier laid down an early marker, beating defending premiers Millicent by 5 goals in the Limestone Coast League's opening round. East Gambier took down Caston and Sandford 90-39, while Penola had the bye. In a lopsided round of the Mid-South East, Glencoe beat Congarong, Robe trounced Port MacDonnell, Tantanoola defeated Clangadoo, and Hatherley beat Nangwarry. Finally, in the KNTFL, Mundalla edged out Keith, Cubby-Bolite narrowly beat Pathway, Kingston defeated Bordertown, and Border Districts beat Narracord. Across the southeast, this is ABC News.
Yeah, give me that happy wash.
Scratch-free guarantee.
Make me feel like a limousine. Happy wash, happy car at OTR.